So how are things going in daycare?
It must be near the full moon. It's been a pretty wild day.
Well, look who's here.
Hi.
Looks like you got a new lunchbox for school.
Well, you can always tell us moms with growing kids, we're the one with high fashion accessories.
You mean like my cool Mickey Mouse sheets?
Hey, June, how's your first week going?
You don't look so good. What's wrong?
What took you so long?
I don't believe it. Bertha Hadson just tried to punch me out.
What?
What happened?
Okay. I don't know. I was talking to her, trying to get her involved in some sort of activity. I tried to be real friendly. I don't know what happened. Hi, Bertha. How are we today, honey? Oh, don't we look nice? How come you're not taking part in any of the activities? There's got to be something you'd like to do. Let's see, there are a lot of fun things to do around here. We have bingo, TV, playing catch, quilting, current events. We have to get ourselves more involved in recreational activities. What do you want to do?
All right.
Oh, honey, I don't want to see you so sad and unhappy. Oh, go! I don't know what got into her. I was really scared.
Wow, I don't blame you.
Yeah, that kind of thing can happen to any of us, even those of us in daycare.
You know, it's a shame you weren't here last month when we had that workshop on communication. Yeah, it really might have helped you.
Yeah.
What kind of things did they tell you?
Well, they went over, 4 ways that we could learn to communicate better.
Okay, this is a test. We're going to see how good Sally's memory is.
All right, all right. The first one was how to start a conversation in a positive way. The second one was how we could be more clear about what we were trying to communicate. And the third one is how we could better communicate our emotions. And the fourth one, all right, I give up, I'm stuck.
Wasn't the fourth one something about paying attention?
That is exactly right. The fourth one is, how we can try to understand what the other person is saying. Pretty good, eh?
Well, you did have a little help, but you got them all. You got them all. No, it really was a good workshop. The thing that I liked best was when they gave us situations and asked us how we'd handle them.
That was good.
Yeah. I really got a lot out of that.
Maybe we could do that for June. We could even use what happened to you this morning.
Oh, if you guys wouldn't mind, that would be great. I never want to be in that kind of situation again.
Okay, let's start off with the first one, which was, what, Sally?
How to start a conversation in a positive way.
Right. There are lots of ways that you can start a conversation off. Now, let's see, you were walking into the room and Bertha was sitting there looking outside.
Hi, honey. How are we today? Oh, don't we look nice? How come we're not taking part in any activities? We need to be more active and do things with the other residents, cutie. There's got to be something around here you'd like to do. Let's see. We have bingo, TV, quilting, current events, playing catch. We have to be more active.
It might have been a good idea to let Bertha know you were there before touching or even talking to her. She probably didn't hear you coming, so when you turned her wheelchair, she probably got a good scare.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that makes a lot of sense. No wonder Bertha looked so strange when I turned a wheelchair around. And then I got nervous and didn't know what to say to her. What should I have done?
It's always good to start a conversation off using the family name like Mrs. Hadson rather than the first name, at least until she gets to know you better.
Then tell her your name, that you're an aide, and why you're there.
Right.
Sometimes people forget who you are. And it's also a good idea to chat a little, too.
Yeah, and give the person a few extra minutes to think and respond. If you try to hurry her, she may just get frustrated and have even more trouble expressing herself.
It sounds like things would have gone a lot smoother if I had done all that. Hi, Mrs. Hadson.
Hello?
I'm June, your aide.
Oh, hi.
How are you today?
Fine.
Good, good. It's a nice day out, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful.
It sounds so simple, but I guess I never thought about it. Still, how do I get her to do something?
You know what I've noticed? It helps to use short sentences with the most important words at the end of the sentence.
I bet. You look nice today.
Thank you.
Pretty blouse.
my daughter gave me.
Oh, it's really lovely. It really is.
Thank you.
Did your daughter put the
Short sentences help a lot. Sometimes when I'm using longer, more complicated sentences, some folks forget what I'm talking about before I finish.
Yeah, and you know, if someone looks like they don't understand, well, repeat it once or twice. Or try rephrasing it using different words.
You look tired. Do you want to lie down? Do you want to lie down? Do you want a nap?
Oh, no, thank you.
Boy, something else that I've learned is never to use cliches or sayings. One day, Mrs. Taylor almost killed herself when I told her to get hopping.
Another thing, avoid open-ended questions. Some folks don't know how to answer questions like, what do you want? And people with Alzheimer's disease may not have any idea what their choices are.
Yeah, and then they get frustrated or angry or embarrassed.
Well, then how do I find out what they want?
Well, you can limit your choices or ask yes/no questions.
There are several activities going on. Would you like to play bingo or cards?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, maybe we could watch TV. But what if I keep giving her the wrong choices? That could go on forever.
When you get to know each person better, you'll figure out what choices to give them.
It's not easy when you're new.
Sure, but in the meantime, you can ask one of us. That's what we're here for.
Sometimes, though, we all just have to guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still not sure how to get Bertha to do something.
I know what'll get Bertha going. She likes to help people out. She's used to it. She took care of a big family. You could...
Mrs. Hadson, I'm supposed to make placemats for the holidays. I sure could use your help. Would you help me decorate placemats for the holidays?
Oh, I don't know.
You could help me a lot. Just for a little while?
Maybe just for a little while.
Great, thanks a lot. Let's go to the dining room.
Okay.
Do you have a big family?
7 children I raised.
Wow, 7 kids is a lot of work.
Well, they're worth it.
Of course, things don't always turn out that well, but at least you have some ideas about what to say.
That helped a lot.
Hello, my name is Rose Boron, and like you, I go to work every day in a CBRF. And also, like you, I come into contact daily with residents who have difficulty understanding my attempts to communicate with them, and also who have difficulty trying to make me understand their attempts at communication. As a caregiver in a CBRF, it is very important that we have a basic knowledge and understanding of communicating with residents that have dementia. It is important that we take that overall knowledge and individualize it to meet the communication abilities and needs of each resident. This unit of the Helen Bader Foundation CBRF training program is called Let's Communicate. This unit will start with a pre-test, followed by the Let's Communicate presentation, and will conclude with a post-test. Please prepare to take the pre-test now. This test will help you to identify the important information that you will need to learn from this unit. Your responses to the pre-test and post-test will not be graded. Feel free to take notes in your workbook during the presentation of this unit. At this time, please turn off the videotape and complete the Let's Communicate pre-test in your workbook. The way that you communicate will greatly affect the way the resident responds to you. A person communicates not only with what they say verbally, but also with what they say non-verbally, their body language and their facial expressions. Communicating with the resident that has dementia can be very difficult and frustrating experience for the caregiver and for the resident. Often, in the earlier stages of the disease, the resident has trouble finding the right words to make a sentence. They often have trouble expressing what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and they might forget words in the middle of a sentence. In the latter stages of dementia, communicating verbally is even more difficult. The residents' language skills are usually greatly impaired, resulting in them using words that are not appropriate or speaking in a garbled speech that cannot be understood or made sense. When a resident cannot comprehend what is being said or cannot find the right words to express their own thoughts, it can be very painful, frustrating, and embarrassing for them and for the people that are involved. It's very important to remember that difficult behaviors are often triggered by these feelings and experiences and can be prevented if the caregiver has good communication skills. Why is it so important to be able to communicate with the resident? How does it help the resident? Well, first of all, the residents being able to communicate with you helps them to have a feeling of self-worth, helps them to have a feeling of connection. It helps them to maintain their self-esteem. It helps to improve the quality of their life. It helps them to feel safe in their surroundings. And when they're feeling safe and content in their surrounding, they're calmer and they're more agreeable and more cooperative with you. Important points to remember: your approach, and you set the tone. Your approach is how you enter the resident space and begin to communicate with them. Your tone is the mood and the attitude that you set. Think about how you're presenting yourself. Are you tense? Are you frowning? Are you bossy? How are you standing when you're talking to the resident? What are you telling them when you're standing like this? You're telling them, I'm in a hurry, I'm in charge here, we'll do things the way I want them done. Body language, again, sets the tone when you're communicating with the residents. Residents are very aware of nonverbal communication, your body tension. Remember, if you're impatient and if you're tense, the resident is going to respond to that and will react to you in the same way. Try a calm, gentle, matter-of-fact approach. You set the mood and attitude for the communication. Your easy, relaxed manner may be contagious for the resident. Use a non-demanding approach. Humor can often help the caregiver through a difficult moment. Convincing a resident to get out of bed and go to the bathroom is usually easier if you make contact with that resident first. How many of you are able to open your eyes, jump out of bed, and start your day without a few minutes just to collect your thoughts? That same approach applies for the resident with dementia. You want to make contact with them. You may go into the room, address the resident. Good morning, Mrs. Smith. It's me, Rose. I'd like to help you get up. What have you told Mrs. Smith? You've told her it's morning. You've told her who she is. You've told her who you are. And you've told her what you're going to help her to do. So you've given her some information that will help her to start her day. Ordering or demanding is usually an unsuccessful manner of communicating with a resident that has dementia. A good rule of thumb is, if it doesn't work with a teenager, it won't work with someone with dementia. Try using touch to communicate what you're saying. More residents will find a gentle touch to be reassuring. Touch can show them that their words are being understood. Touch can convey how caring you feel about them. Keep in mind, however, that some residents don't care to be touched. Keep in mind that we all have our own personal body space. And if you're going to invade your residents' personal body space, you are telling them without words that it's okay for them to invade your personal body space. Be prepared for that to happen and don't take offense. Begin your conversations with friendly information. Winning the residents' trust can make a task much simpler. Spend time talking with them about the weather, about a family member, about what's planned for the day before you introduce the thought of taking a bath or getting dressed for the day. Take 5 to save 20. Take 5 minutes to spend with that resident, and in the end you will save 20 minutes by their not becoming frustrated or upset. What should you remember when talking to a resident? Things to think about when you speak. Talk to the resident in a place that is free from noise and confusion. This area should be free of noise. The television should not be on. The radio should not be playing. The other people should not be in the room talking. Remember, the person with dementia has lost the ability to tune out all other background noise. They hear it all, and they are trying to interpret it all. And so you approach them, and they become frustrated or frightened and may act out as a result of that. Begin conversations with familiar information. Always identify yourself. Even if you have assisted this resident with morning cares 2 hours ago, and now it's time to help them to go to the restroom, don't assume that they remember you. Don't assume that because you have been their caregiver for a year that they're going to remember you 2 hours later. Always identify yourself with who you are. Identify the resident as to who they are, and also what is the task that you're going to do for them or assist them with. Make sure that you have the resident's attention. Look directly at the resident and make eye contact before you begin to touch the resident. Visual contact before physical contact. Move slowly and gently and touch their arm when you're talking to them. Be careful not to frighten the resident by approaching them from behind. Put yourself in their place. You're 86 years old. You live in a strange environment. You have no idea who you are, who are the people around you, the noise around you, and what is expected of you. And you think if you could just get out the door, you would be able to find something familiar. And someone comes up from behind and takes a hold of your arm and tries to pull you back. What would you do? What would you do if you were on a busy street and you were lost and someone came up from behind and grabbed a hold of your arm to turn you around? You would want to protect yourself. That is our instinct. It is no different for someone who has Alzheimer's disease or dementia to want to protect themselves. Never approach a resident from behind and touch them. Again, as I've said earlier, it is very important to make eye contact with the resident. It's very important to respect their own personal space. Don't get too close. A resident who cannot see very well also has a very difficult time in communicating. Make sure that they have their own eyeglasses on. Make sure that their eyeglasses are clean. How many of you reach for your glasses like I do in the morning prior to even putting your feet on the floor? Now think about it. If I live in your CBRF and I have dementia and you've gotten me up for the day and you're going to send me down the hall to go down to the dining room for breakfast and I don't have my glasses on and I'm reluctant to go and I'm not cooperating with you and you're wondering what is wrong with me. You've done everything that you're supposed to do for me and done it in the correct way, but you've forgotten to put my glasses on. I'm already lost and don't know where I'm going, and you've just made it worse by that. Speak slowly and say each word very carefully. A resident with dementia who is hard of hearing may have an especially difficult time with communicating. Make sure that the residents have their own hearing aids in. Make sure that the batteries are in, and make sure that the hearing aid is turned on to the point that you hear a little squealing noise, and then turn it down just a little. Imagine if you were hard of hearing and you had dementia, and you were only hearing bits and pieces of words, how much more confused you would be, and how much more frustrated. And the end result of that is you would not be willing to cooperate because you don't know what is expected of you. Use short, simple sentences. Residents with dementia cannot remember directions that have too many steps for them. Pause between sentences and allow plenty of time for the resident to understand the information that you've given them. One of the most frequent mistakes that I made early on in my career of working with people with dementia was to give them a direction and wait a few minutes, what I thought was long enough for them to be able to comprehend and process what I've said. And when they didn't seem to understand, I rephrased it. And I told them the same thing, but in different words. What had I done when I did that to them? I gave them a whole new concept to try to remember. And the resident was still back there trying to figure out what I said in the first place, and now I gave them more information. So you want to remember to speak in slow, concise, simple words. Repeat the direction using the same words for them. It's important not to ask questions that are open-ended. Questions like, what would you like to wear today? What we're asking that resident to do is to think, now I've got a closet full of clothes and I could wear my red dress or my blue dress or my green dress. That resident has lost the ability to be able to do that. We're setting them up for failure or making them admit that they cannot even make that simple of a decision. What we want to do is give them choice and give them control. Would you like to wear your green dress? Would you like to wear your blue dress? And they may progress in the disease far enough that they're not even able to make that simple of a choice. And then we need to say, this is your red dress. How would you like to wear this today? And oftentimes they will agree with that. Use real words and familiar words to the resident. A resident with dementia loses the ability to understand, again, broad, large, abstract terms. The resident may not understand it's time for lunch. Now, when you tell me it's time for lunch, I know that I need to go and wash my hands and go into the dining room and sit down and you're going to serve me lunch and I'm going to enjoy it. If I have Alzheimer's disease or dementia, I have lost the ability to process those steps that it takes to get to lunch. So what you need to do is, one step at a time, bring me to the dining room and show me the chair that I need to sit in. Residents may return to using words from their childhood or words that they had used early in their lives. It is very important that when you admit a resident, you ask the family members, how do you relate? How does the resident relate to bodily functions? How does the resident relate to body parts? I'd like to share an example with you of a resident that lived in a CBRF that I was consulting for. And I was observing the caregiver who approached him. She was a young, very caring caregiver. She did everything correct. She walked up to the resident. She assumed eye level with the resident. She called his name, Philip. She tapped him on the knee as soon as she had visual contact with him. And she said in a very private but a very sincere tone, Philip, do you have to tinkle? And Philip didn't respond. And so she waited a few minutes. She used the correct communication approach. She used the same words. Philip, do you have to tinkle? Again, no response from Philip. So she attempted to stand him up. Philip was not cooperating. So she called another caregiver. Both caregivers stood Philip up and began to walk him, almost drag him, reluctantly down the hall. I looked around, saw that there was no one else around, walked up to Philip and said, Philip, do you have to take a leak? And Philip said, why didn't you say that in the first place? You see, Philip was 92 years old. Philip was a farmer. Philip had never tinkled in his life. He had no idea what that word meant. And the staff person, being gentle and being respectful, tried to help him, but wasn't using the correct terms. It's important to find out from families on admission how the resident relates to those terms. And there are times when we, in our conversation with residents and their bodily functions, have to be a little bit more specific than what we're comfortable doing. But if that's what works for the resident, then that's what we need to do. Always talk in a warm, easygoing, pleasant manner. Use the tone of voice that you would like someone to talk to you in. Keep the sound of your voice low. Do not shout at the resident. Do not assume that because they have gray hair and glasses and wearing a white sweater that they're hard of hearing. Imagine again, if your hearing is very correct and you are very confused and someone stands next to you and is standing over you and talking very loudly, "Mrs. Smith, would you like to go down to the dining room for breakfast?" How is that going to make you feel? It's going to frighten you. You don't know who that person is. You're going to pull back. You're going to pull away. You're going to want to protect yourself. Many times our residents, as they respond to us, are protecting themselves from what they may perceive as a dangerous situation. When you're having trouble being understood, be sure that you're allowing enough time for the resident. When you find that you're still having difficulty trying to get your point across to the resident, helping them to understand what you're saying, you may want to show them what you're saying visually. You may want to hold up the sweater that you want to help them put on. You may want to gesture, "Come here," to them. You may want to show them that you want to sit on the chair. Remember, a resident with dementia can look at a chair and not understand what it's for. You may want to show them that it's time to eat and what you want them to do. These cues help to trigger their memory, and oftentimes that's all it takes to trigger that memory and get things going again for them. Ask yourself, is what you're saying simple enough? Are you using too many words? Again, is the term that you're using too broad for the resident to understand? When you tell someone to go in and brush their teeth, that seems like a pretty basic, simple task, doesn't it? Think about it. How many steps does it take to brush your teeth? First of all, you need to find the bathroom. You need to turn on the light. You need to take the toothpaste out of the drawer, take the toothbrush out of the drawer, take the cover off the toothpaste, squeeze it on the toothbrush, turn the water on, hold the brush under the water, and then bring it up to your mouth and start brushing your teeth. You and I do it just like that. We don't think a thing about it. That is far too complicated for someone with dementia. We cannot assume that they will automatically know what to do. And we need to change our approach in care and communication to meet what they're able to do. If you're communicating with someone and you have tried several attempts and you have not been successful, and you're becoming frustrated and the resident is becoming frustrated, take a few minutes, step back, or put your arm around that resident if they're comfortable with that approach. And just show them that you're patient and you are caring and that you will try again. If you're very frustrated with trying to communicate with them and you've not been successful, step away and allow someone else to come in the room and try to communicate. When you're having trouble understanding what the resident is saying to you, again, listen carefully to what they're saying. Take a minute, apologize, just say, "I didn't quite understand that. Can you say it again?" Listen for a key word in their sentence so that maybe that key word will give you an idea of what they're trying to say to you. Respond to the resident's emotional tone. Respond to what they're saying emotionally to you, even if you're not able to understand what they're saying verbally to you. Saying, "You sound very angry today," lets that resident know that you've connected. Even if the words are not, you're not able to understand the words, you're understanding the emotion. They're not alone anymore. They've made a connection with you. Remember to stay calm and patient. The resident is not responding to you because they have a personal problem with you. They are not being uncooperative because of this. It is the result of the deterioration in their brain. Your calmness and patience will help to create a caring mood and attitude and will help the resident to continue to try to communicate with you. Things not to do. Don't argue with the resident. If you come across two residents that are having an argument and you walk into that situation and you say, "What's going on here? What have you done?" you're laying blame. One of the two of those residents have to assume the responsibility for the problem. And then you've made the situation worse. So don't argue with the residents. Remember, they may no longer have the ability to use logic or reason in any situation. A very successful method in communicating with residents with Alzheimer's disease and dementia is entering their reality, validating their feelings. And I'm going to share some examples of that with you. Let's say that I'm one of your residents and I am very angry. And I am in the kitchen and I am pounding on the cupboard and I'm saying, somebody stole my underwear. And I'm so angry and my underwear is missing. And what are you going to do about it? Now you could say to me, Rose, you have 6 new pair of underwear in your drawer. I saw them there this morning when I helped you get dressed. You know that they're there, Rose. No one is stealing your underwear. No one steals from anybody here. How many times have we said that? How many times have we used that approach? In using that approach, what have you said to me? You've told me that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm crazy, that I am wrong. What you should do is enter my reality, validate my feeling. So when I am pounding on the table and saying to you, someone has stole my underwear and I'm really angry, you need to say to me, well, I don't blame you. That would upset me too if someone took my clothes from me. Let's go and try and find them. Let me help you. You want to be the rescuer. You want to enter my reality, acknowledge what I have said to be true, and then try to help me. Another example is a resident whose name is Annie. Annie was a farmer's wife. And not just a farmer's wife, but she was a farmer as well. She worked side by side with her husband every day in the barn, in the fields for 45 years before she came to live with us. Annie, every day around 4 o'clock to 6:30 in the evening, would become very anxious and very agitated, sundowning. She would be looking for ways to get home, wanting to go to the barn, needing to put her barn clothes on. One day, there was another resident in the activity room that had a lovely silk scarf on. Annie was convinced that that was her barn scarf, and she almost choked the lady trying to get her barn scarf back from her. So we needed to come up with a solution. The one solution that the staff member tried was not successful. She said to Annie, Annie, you live here now. You've sold your farm to your son. Your husband died, and now you live here, and you don't have to worry about doing the farm work anymore. And for offering that information, that caregiver received a sound smack across the face from Annie, because Annie knew that that was not true. When the caregiver told her that information, she also took away from Annie her reason for living, the importance of her life, her self-esteem. She told her something that had been very important to her all of her life meant nothing anymore. We needed to have another approach. So we called the family in for a conference, specifically after the scarf incident. We asked the family what they could bring to help us. They brought Annie's scarf from home and her sweater. These items of clothing were still hanging in the barn where Annie had hung them the last day she had gone out to do chores. So you can imagine that the scarf and the sweater had quite the aroma about them. Thereafter, whenever Annie became frustrated or agitated or during the sundown period of the day needed to get her barn clothes on, we took her barn clothes out of the tightly sealed plastic bag that was up in her closet, and we gave them for her to wear. And she would wear them for an hour or two, and then she would take them off and just lay them on the bed, and the family and the staff then would put them back in the bag and put them up in the closet until the next time Annie needed her barn clothes. And when the barn clothes lost the aroma that they had had, the family kept more for us. Annie had her barn clothes. We entered her reality. We validated her feelings of importance, of self-esteem. She still had a very important job to do, and we acknowledged that. Another example is, I'm sure many of you have come across a resident who has been crying and looking for her mother or missing her mother. And those feelings of tears and heartache are genuine. And how does it benefit the resident if you say, now Mrs. Smith, you need to think about this. You're 90 years old. It is extremely unlikely that your mother would still be living. If someone has Alzheimer's disease or irreversible dementia, they have forgotten the death of a loved one. And when you introduce that concept to them, they are experiencing that same emotion and loss and grief and mourning. And when you're telling them that, you're making the situation worse. Your approach that you need to use is, again, enter their reality, validate that feeling. You must miss your mother a great deal. Say it in a tone of voice that they can understand that you recognize their feeling of loss or their feeling of unhappiness. And then start talking about their mother. Ask questions about their mother. Start talking about, did you used to cook with your mother? Did you ever make vegetable soup with your mother? What kind of vegetables did you add? Engage that resident in positive conversation about their mother, still allowing them to talk about her, but walking away one step at a time from the crisis of the situation. Turning slowly, not quickly, turning that unhappy situation into a positive situation for the resident. Don't order the resident around. Few of us like to be bossed around, and the resident with dementia is no exception. Even if your words cannot be understood, again, remember, your tone of voice is understood. Your facial expressions are understood. Don't tell the resident what they can and cannot do. Give directions in a positive way. Tell them specifically what you want. Don't say, stop, don't go out the door. What might the resident hear? They might just hear the go out the door part. And they're going to go out the door, and you're going to be right behind them trying to stop them from going out the door. They're going to be very frustrated with you because they think that they were doing what you told them to do. Instead of saying you can't go outside right now, offer something else for the resident to do. Maybe they have a picture album that you can sit down and look at with them, redirecting them. Never present yourself as being above or better than the resident. Don't use a degrading tone of voice when you're speaking to them. Don't talk to them like they're childlike. Speaking in a degrading tone of voice is likely to cause the resident with dementia to become angry. Even if they don't understand the words that you're saying, again, they are picking up on the tone that you're saying. Don't ask questions that require the resident to use his or her good memory. Don't play the do you remember game. If you ask them a question that they're no longer able to remember, again, you've set them up for failure. You're making them admit that they can't remember. You'll be embarrassing them, and sometimes maybe even making them angry. Try rephrasing questions. Instead of saying, who is this in this picture? Say, this must be your daughter in the picture. And show them what you see in the picture and help them to be able to describe it. Don't talk about the resident in front of them as if they weren't present. It's easy to fall into the habit of talking about people when they no longer communicate well. And we're trying to communicate for them. Remember, we need to respect the rights and dignity of each resident. When verbal communication fails, nonverbal communication becomes very important. Remember that we need to watch the residents' nonverbal attempts at communication. A resident who has to go to the bathroom is not going to be able to tell you that, but he will nonverbally start looking around for something. He may be in, or she may be in their room rummaging through their drawers or through their closets, and they're looking for something, and it might be as simple as they're looking for something to eat. But the rumbling in their stomach or the stomach pains that they might experience The thought process doesn't go to the brain. They're not able to tell you that that's what it is. A resident who has irreversible dementia and is 86 years old and has a urinary tract infection is not going to be able to tell you that they have to go to the bathroom frequently or that they have burning upon urination, but they are going to be able to tell you by their nonverbal communications and their changes in behavior that something is wrong. Another example of nonverbal communication is a resident that went to an adult daycare, and he was the only gentleman in that program, and he was and truly enjoyed it and was a ladies' man and did very well. He came back on a Monday morning and he seemed just to be a little bit tense, and as the day wore on he was even more tense and not as cooperative. He came back on Tuesday and there was a significant change in his behavior. He was reluctant to do what the staff had invited him to do. He always enjoyed standing at the piano when the staff person played and lead in the sing-along. Refused to do that and even struck out at a staff person. Began to pace and wander and walk and be very restless. And the family, the adult day staff called the family and said, has there anything happened that was differently? What's unusual with your husband? And the wife said, well, nothing really. We had a quiet weekend. My daughter and her husband came from the cities, and they brought Dad some new shoes and a new shirt, and he was very happy with them. And the light bulb went on. The new shoes. The problem was the new shoes were tight. And because in adult daycare it is not a routine habit to take the residents' shoes and socks off, the staff had no idea that this gentleman was in pain. His shoes were too tight. They were rubbing on his bunions. And the nonverbal communication was a change in his behavior. His walking, his pacing, not able to say I'm in pain, but obviously trying to get away from someone or something. So nonverbal communication becomes very, very important as the resident loses the ability to be able to describe what a problem is. As always, in using nonverbal communication as a staff, we need to approach the resident slowly. Always make visual contact before making physical contact, demonstrating to the resident to get them in motion, to help to trigger for them what needs to be done. Mirroring the resident's emotions. Mirroring means just that. When you look in the mirror, you see your physical appearance. You need to do that with the resident. Show them what you're seeing, their facial expression. This helps them at that stage. When I began this presentation, I talked about some of the things that we have in common, and that being going to a CBRF every day to work and working with people who have difficulty in understanding and difficulty in communicating. We have something else in common, and that is we have had some of the most sophisticated, knowledgeable instructors and trainers and teachers in the field of Alzheimer's disease, and those are the residents themselves. It is very important that you take the information that you have gained from this presentation and take it to your residents and individualize it to each resident's needs. We will end the Let's Communicate unit with the post-test. Remember, the post-test questions are the same as the pre-test questions. You will not be graded on the responses to these questions. The responses will be reviewed after you have completed the post-test. Turn off the videotape and complete the Let's Communicate post-test in your workbook. Welcome back. Now let's review the questions to the Let's Communicate post-test. Question 1. If the caregiver is anxious and angry when approaching the resident with dementia, the resident is likely to become angry and anxious or annoyed. True. If the caregiver's approach is calm and gentle and matter-of-fact, the mood and attitude that is set is likely to be contagious. Question number 2. A resident with dementia may lose their ability to block out background noises such as a radio, television, or other people talking. True. Competing noises and activities surrounding the resident with dementia will make it more difficult for them to concentrate on what is being said to them. So as you enter their room and need to talk with them, ask them, is it all right if I turn the television off? And then begin to communicate with them. Question number 3. A resident with dementia that is hard of hearing and has difficulty seeing may have an especially difficult time with communicating. True. It is difficult for a resident with dementia to communicate, and even more difficult when he or she cannot see or hear well. Question number 4. Giving a resident with dementia a new task to do will help them to feel good about themselves. False. Residents with dementia often lose their ability to do unfamiliar tasks. Giving a resident with dementia a new task may cause them to feel frustrated or angry and anxious, may cause them to fail, may cause them not to be willing to attempt to work with you again. Now, question number 5. If the resident with dementia does not understand what you're trying to say to them, try explaining again, using more words. False. It is important when communicating with the resident with dementia to use simple words and sentences. Using too many words will only confuse and frustrate them and overwhelm them. Again, setting them up for failure, making them feel apprehensive or fearful of trying again. Question number 6. By listening carefully and by being patient and calm, the caregiver can help to create a caring mood, tone, attitude in which to communicate. True. The resident feels more comfortable if they know you're not in a hurry, if they know that you are willing to listen, if your attitude and tone tells them that you will be patient. Question number 7. Asking direct questions that the resident with dementia may rely on his or her own good memory will help them to remember their past. False. Residents with dementia have memory loss. Asking them to remember things they can't remember will only be embarrassing for them and frustrating for them. Question number 8. If a resident with dementia has a verbal outburst and it does not harm or upset anyone, it is best to ignore it. True. It is better to ignore angry or agitated outbursts than to become upset yourself. Drop the subject. Try to create a cheerful, positive mood and tone. This will conclude the Let's Communicate unit. It has been my pleasure to be your presenter. One thing I would like to leave you with is the importance of individualizing your communication approaches with each resident. It's important to treat each resident as an individual, respecting who they are and who they have been. Thank you.